I still wanted to do the draft, trade, and pass segment that we did last week for the NFC West. I'm going to do that for the AFC West. Let's start with the Chiefs. Obviously, they are the defending champs of the AFC West. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes is going to be someone that everyone's going to go after. I try to make it where, I'm not going to pick guys who are going to be constantly, first, second, even possibly third round pick. I try to be pretty even about it, but some of them were harder than others. But the Chiefs were actually fairly easy. I didn't put Travis Kelce in there. Again, you're going to draft him, or Patrick Mahomes, you're going to draft him. So it's just a matter of where. So what I wanted to bring up was kind of the lower echelon, if you will, of players. So who would you draft, trade, or pass on? And for me, this one was, I don't know, it was kind of simple, to be perfectly honest. So I put Juju Smith-Schuster, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and, of course, Marquez Valdez-Scantling. Right off the bat, I'm going to pass on Marquez Valdez-Scantling. I think he's a good player. I think he's a good, decent receiver. But the issue with Marquez is he's the kind of guy who, really has to get a streak. Basically, he's got to burn his guy. He's not the best of route runners. He'll have a couple of good games where, he'll kind of go off, of course. And I think Patrick Mahomes, to be perfectly honest, call me crazy. I know a lot of people probably will disagree with this. But for me, I think Patrick Mahomes spreads the ball out and a lot more than Aaron Rodgers does. Now, I'm not saying that I think Mahomes is better than Rodgers, which I won't say it, but I do kind of. But I do believe that Patrick Mahomes is not as scared to spread it out as Aaron Rodgers is. Aaron Rodgers is a great quarterback. I'm not saying he's terrible, but he does get comfortable with certain guys, and he kind of relies on those guys. James Jones. Man, I'm blanking. Jordy Nelson. Obviously, recently, Devontae Adams. He relied a lot on those guys when they were on his team. Randall Cobb was another one. So guys that he trusts, he just constantly goes to, which is fine. I mean, obviously, it's worked out great for him. But with Mahomes, even though if he doesn't have that great, buddy relationship with some of his receivers, he still throws to them. I mean, Demarcus Robinson, who was on the Raiders and now was signed to the Ravens. I mean, he's kind of not finding a fit anywhere else other than when he was with the Chiefs, which is crazy. Guys like that, it's kind of like, I think, I can't think of his first name, but Pringle was another guy that had a few like random just big games for the Chiefs. So, and a guy who probably would struggle to even be a number 3 option in any other offense, even on the bad team. So that's what I'm saying is Mahomes likes to spread it out, and he doesn't care if he's buddy with you or not. He's going to throw it to you regardless. And so I do think Marquez Valdez-Scantling has some value, but out of these 3 guys, I think he's the low guy on the totem pole. So I would pass on Marquez Valdez-Scantling. Now, having said all that, I'm actually going to target Juju Smith. I think this one is kind of where it's like a 50-50 thing. I do understand that Juju was on the Steelers team with a Ben Roethlisberger who was kind of downgrading. And Big Ben was not really throwing. He didn't have the arm strength anymore. His accuracy was starting to dip a little bit as well. So, there were a lot of factors in Pittsburgh, and a lot of people were saying, well, Juju Smith, I mean, he was kind of struggling because of the quarterback that he had. But I would actually say that you can kind of say that Ben Roethlisberger wasn't as terrible as we were saying because, Deontay Johnson was a big receiver for the Steelers. the rookie year of Chase Claypool was huge. He was great. He had a great year. That was both of those guys were with Big Ben. So, although you can say that Juju Smith wasn't really getting a lot of the passes because of the emergence of Claypool, the emergence of Johnson, at the same token, you can say, but those guys, had to create their own name. And Juju was really good with Antonio Brown, but then all of a sudden dropped off when he left. So it kind of makes you think, is there a possibility that he can't be the number one guy? He has to be maybe the number two or the number three guy. And I would say that is a possibility. But at the same time, when he does have the ball, he is a big guy. He's not one of those guys who is just like a weak, fast receiver. He is a good slot receiver. But what I have noticed in the last couple of years is his separation is not there. He's not getting separation a lot. So I think he's going to benefit from being in the Kansas City offense where they create openings for you. So I think that will help him. But that's why I'm a little hesitant, and that's why I'm going to say I'm going to target him, because I do think that there is a version of Juju Smith-Schuster that is going to be phenomenal, but I also do feel like there is going to be a version of Juju that, is going to be the same as we saw in last year in Pittsburgh, which was a whole lot of nothing. And he does have a lot of injuries. That's another concern for me as well. So I would target Juju, and of course now the only one left is I would draft Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Here's my thing. I do like Clyde Edwards-Helaire because of his catching ability. He hasn't really shown a lot as just a pure running back. Now, of course, the NFL is kind of shifting away from all of that, so there is a possibility that you don't have to be this good running back anymore like a Derrick Henry. But I do feel like you do need that type of ability in this game still. You still need to run the football, and it has to be effective. And it can't just be solely relying on the line. As good as your offensive line is, there's still going to be times where it breaks down. So do you have a good enough running back who can, get away from a few tackles and get past the line of scrimmage and possibly more? We don't know. So with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I don't think he's that type of back. I think he's more of the guy who, is probably going to struggle most of the time if the offensive line breaks down. Now, his catching ability is going to help him in a fantasy value, and that's why I would draft him, because of the passing game with Kansas City Chiefs and because of Patrick Mahomes, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is always going to have a situation where he could possibly get a touchdown at any certain time, or 6 catches and rush for 50, 60 yards and run in for another touchdown as well. So I think there is a version of that will happen. Again, injuries with him, he has had a few, but usually they're kind of like 2, 3, sometimes 4, maybe even 5 weeks. But then he comes back. So, if he does get injured, yeah, you could miss him for a few weeks, but most of the time he is going to be coming back. So, to recap, I would draft Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I would target Juju Smith, and I would completely pass on Marquez Valdez-Scantling.